So in thinking about the future of the UN and how best to reform it, I think the first thing I would advise keeping in mind is that the UN, I think we should sooner think of as not an executive authority, not as something equivalent to a world government. And that's often how people try to think of the UN, as if it should be a replacement for governments around the world. It should be some sort of central political power. I think that's a mistake. The UN can never fulfill that role. Rather, I think the more promising way to think about the UN would be as a consulting organization, an organization that can help sovereign states come together to discuss, share information, and coordinate their responses to the problems and challenges, threats that face those states together. And I think really the key to improving the international order lies in reinforcing sovereignty throughout the world. Because I really think that states need to be responsible to their own populations. And ideally, that responsibility is expressed through democratic governance. Because if we don't have states that respond to the needs of their own populations, the question is, what good are those states for? And there's nothing out there that's going to replace the nation state. And the nation state's essential to protecting the health, well-being, and prosperity of everyone who lives in the world today. And when thinking about the threats to sovereignty, I basically see the two greatest threats are those from above. And by that I mean particularly those states in the world that have inordinate levels of military and economic power. They're able to undermine, whether not necessarily willingly, but simply by their mere existence, or able to undermine the sovereignty other states throughout the world. And that makes it very difficult for those smaller states to carry out policies that can benefit their own populations. In addition to that, also, I think we can name global corporations as a potential threat to the well-being of many people around the world. That is a threat to sovereignty. The budgets of multiple companies, global companies in the world, are larger than the budgets of many states around the world. And that sort of imbalance is one that can be very dangerous to those populations that live in those small states, because, of course, the goal of a corporation is to produce a profit for its shareholders, not necessarily to look after the well-being of people throughout the world. So that needs to be somehow, sovereignty needs to be defended and maintained against those threats. And then you have some from below, you call them, and that would be just to single out one, is the problem of migration, which is now we already feel that as being a problem. Certainly it's in Turkey, you can see that, you can feel that in Turkey. But it's also a problem very much in Europe, the United States, we're grappling with that. And there's no easy or universal solution to the problem of migration. It's a real thing, but what we need to do is to handle it properly, because again, migration is one of those things that can undermine the stability of a country, disrupt its democratic processes, and if it's not handled correctly. And there too, that's one that I think a prime threat, and one that's, I think, unfortunately probably only going to continue in the future. And there needs to be greater cooperation so that the problems of migration can be mitigated, and it can be regulated to an extent that both protects the sovereignty and well-being of people who are remaining in place in the governments, while also looking to protect the human rights of those people who are forced into migration for various reasons. So in thinking about Turkey and its place in more of a multilateral system in the world, I think there's no doubt that Turkey's importance in the multilateral, or multipolar global system will only increase. And the reasons for that, I think, are the ones that have always made Turkey an important player. And that is, first and foremost, of course, its geography. Turkey is in an extraordinarily sensitive geography, part of the Balkans, Europe, the Black Sea region, the Caucasus, the Middle East. These are all areas that within the last decade, we've seen multiple threats to stability. Unfortunately, I think many of those threats to stability are going to continue. And Turkey is a stable actor in these parts of the world. I was going to say this part of the world, but it's multiple parts of the world, and that's not going to change. I think in addition to that, what makes Turkey important, in addition to its geography, is the fact that it in fact has cultural links to all these areas, would that be Europe, to the Muslim world, to the Caucasus, to Eurasia, to all these places that Turkey is not a foreigner to these places. I think that might be the best way to put it. And along with that goes Turkey's long history of statehood and a rich tradition of diplomacy, which that gives Turkey, I think, quite an advantage in these areas, and also makes, therefore, gives Turkey an advantage, but let me emphasize also, I think puts greater responsibility on Turkey to live up to the best traditions of its statehood and its diplomacy, its diplomatic traditions. That is, Turkey, as both a republic and then its predecessor, the Ottoman Empire, has a long experience of being a leader in all of these regions. And I think it's quite important for the future of these regions and for world stability that Turkey not only continue to play that role, but I hope actually will be able to play that role, an even larger role, and a more productive one. Thinking about the Afghanistan and what this portends for Turkey and the broader neighborhood, and whether the long-term effects of the U.S. NATO withdrawal from there. Obviously, Turkey already is feeling the effects of Afghanistan. That's through migration as Afghans move through Iran and coming to Turkey, either looking to work and stay in Turkey or to go on further and to Europe. That's only one example. We don't know what the Taliban is going to do. If the Taliban will seek in some ways to challenge its neighbors. Hopefully nothing like that will happen. But again, Turkey is going to be essential to this, and I think this is a good example where Turkey's multifaceted statecraft can play a great role. That is, Turkey and Afghanistan do have a history that goes back. The Turkish Republic in Afghanistan, after the end of the First World War, had very close relations. Saw each other as states that had something in common, that they were both Muslim, they were independent and sovereign, and this is an era of high imperialism, so there weren't all that many states like that. And so there's a sort of, I think, understanding both of Afghanistan's and Turks. They recognize something in common that they have with each other. You have the cultural links with Islam, which is important as well. I think it makes it easier for Turks to speak to Afghans. You could also, one might also point to the broader Eurasian cultural, Turkic links to Afghanistan, but then also Turkey being a member of NATO, that Turkey can also speak to its fellow NATO allies in Europe and the United States, and that it really is a unique capacity that Turkey can fulfill, and as being a mediator of sorts between Afghanistan and Afghanistan's, maybe I can't say neighbors, but its interlocutors as the United States and Europe. So I think Turkey will only have, I think, play an important role in the security of Afghanistan's broader region, and in the broader Middle East, and that's again due to Turkey's geography, its position of stability, status as a stable government in the region, and one with a capable military, with developing military technology. And Turkey can and is playing that role right now, and I think will continue to play that role. And it's a necessary one that we, I think, can feel confident in that Turkey will, again, continue to fulfill that role, and one that I believe that Turkey will play a positive role for the region overall in using its weight for stability.